Welcome to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Okay, the elites eating mermaids was not a rabbit hole I thought I'd be going down this week. So you've probably seen some posts about this completely insane story. Entertainment purposes only, none of this is real. Now, mermaids are a cryptid that have been around in folklore for a long time. And I mean a long time, to at least 3200 BC, where early sailors spoke of these creatures called sirens, half women, half fish beings that would lure sailors in with their songs and then drag them down to their doom at the bottom of the sea. And it's why later manatees, their scientific order name is Sirenia, because sailors who came to the New World thought that they were seeing the mermaids of legend, when really they were just manatees. You even had people trying to claim that they would catch mermaids, like the Fiji mermaid, which is supposedly the mummified remains of one. Although it was later found to be just a hoaxed taxidermy creation from sewing a monkey and a fish together. It's unknown who created it originally, but it was first exhibited by P.T. Barnum in 1842. And fun fact, the Fiji mermaid is now housed in a nature museum in Grafton, Vermont. All that to say, mermaids are largely thought to just be a myth. But recently, some people are out there claiming that these things actually exist, like the person who reached out to Jaylee 2.07, claiming that they got a deep sea fishing job that went out to specifically catch a special kind of fish. And these special fish turned out to be mermaids. And he didn't believe it until they actually caught one. And from there, these fishermen would sell the mermaids to some very wealthy people. And then there was this other story sent to Tiff's Ghost Talk about this guy claiming to be a kind of connoisseur of rare dishes around the world and had heard about these secret mermaid dinner parties hosted by the elites. And this guy wound up paying something like 50 grand to get into one of these parties at an undisclosed location. And he makes it there, and there's about 25 other people, some of which are well-known, wealthy people, actors, movie producers, that kind of thing. And long story short, these people are basically served mermaid. This guy thinks it's totally made up, but it turns out to be the actual thing, and people are really digging on the meat from it. Which is interesting because in some mermaid legends, they say if you eat mermaid, you can gain immortality. Now, to me, this all sounds super far-fetched, but there are some strange things that do happen in this world.
Personally, I feel like all this mermaid talk is just ridiculous, but it's starting to get a lot more traction online, so I can't really just ignore it. People are wanting to know what it's all about. Still though, the only things that appear to have been added to this story are more tall tales with no evidence, just people making outlandish claims. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there was money behind this. It's gaining that much traction online. Watch a couple of months go by and this turns out that this was some viral marketing campaign by a company that's trying to make some B-rated horror movie about rich people eating mermaids. I would believe that that is what's going on before I would believe that these stories are true, because so far we've been presented with absolutely nothing but hearsay and no evidence. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at berry-stepp.com.
Elon Musk's Neuralink files trademark for telepathy and telekinesis. I knew this was coming. So this guy, ASAP Rocky kind of, but not really, he made a video about how we're going to split into two different factors or factions. The people that use telepathy, like the telepathy tapes, where you just can like learn to do it. And then there's going to be the sector that has these Neuralinks that like do it with their brain because they're like half machine. I personally am going to do it without Neuralink. So they not only filed it for telepathy and telekinesis, but other future products. I bet you it has to do with viewing other realities and dimensions. Basically, Neuralink is going to be able to hack your brain and your view of reality. And once you learn that reality is actually alive and malleable, you realize that you can affect it with your consciousness, which is exactly what this is proving. There is a school that's been around for years called the Monroe Institute in Virginia, and they have a spoon bending course. It is called MC Squared. I'm literally going to it. These things are real. The future is here. So they described it as Neuralink is facilitating communication. Listen, to each their own. I'd rather be a natural telepath. Some of you may not.
Okay, two things on this one. For one, that lady clearly just glazed over that and added her own worries and fears into the article. It doesn't say that Elon Musk trademarked telepathy and telekinesis. It says that he trademarked the names telepathy and telekinesis. He wants to use those words that have clear mental imagery built into them already to try to sell you a product he wants to convince you is going to give you those abilities. I really think that's all that's going on here. And yes, he may actually be trying to develop those technologies. He He has stated in the past that this is his eventual goal, but this doesn't prove that he's figured it out already. Secondly, I looked into the offerings of the Monroe Institute, and you can take that spoon bending course over a 5-hour Zoom call for $210. I don't believe for a second that spoon bending is even physically possible without trickery and deception. But for $210 and a less than 1 day time commitment, I may actually sign up for this thing and see what kind of stuff they're trying to teach you in this class. I could even record the whole thing and make a review video out of it if that's something y'all'd like to watch. Who knows, maybe at the end of the video I'll be able to teach you how to bend a spoon by pointing your eyes toward each other.
Photograph, and then it can figure out what the next frames would be if that person were to blink, smile, cough, throw a kiss.
Yep, artificial intelligence predicts how the photo subjects would move or gesture in real life, then generates an animated video of what that might look like.
It's amazing how a prophecy written 2,000 years ago, one that wouldn't even make sense in that time period on the earth, with the possibility of images speaking, is now coming to a point where we're actually starting to see it happen.
Where the original IP owners should think about that.
I don't know, except to say that by the time these lawsuits are decided, we'll have digital God. So ask digital God at that point.
I came across this next article from 2023, and it really goes to show that the possibility of the AI that is in some of this technology to actually summon entities is something that they're trying to go after. AI technology lets you talk to Jesus or Satan. What do they say? Several apps using artificial intelligence technology now offer the Christian faithful, or perhaps the bored, a way to summon the voices of Jesus, the Virgin Mary, and even Satan through the wonders of language modeling programs. For an extra $2.99 a month, Text with Jesus also gives users access to an extended lineup including Satan himself. The people who initiated this chat with Satan on this AI program, in his response, he said that he was summoned to the conversation, and it says that a follow-up question confirms Satan is conceptually genderless. Evil forces like demons really just prowl around looking for empty vessels to inhabit. So the fact that these AI programs are practically empty vessels looking for something to fill it makes it a very interesting question whether demons are actually possessing this sort of intelligent technology.
It says a lot about our society that the moment a tool like AI gets invented, it's immediately used to create something like this. I don't know that I believe that a demon could possess an AI digital platform and start spreading evil, but a person themselves is another story. If you're toying with stuff like this, are you not opening the door for evil and telling it, come on in? I liken this to playing with a Ouija board. You can't attempt to talk to demonic entities and then be surprised when they show up. And even if you like using one of those apps because texting with Jesus makes you feel good, do you really want a company who thinks it's cool to create a talk to Satan feature, deciding what your responses are from this AI Jesus? People just don't stop and think about what they're doing sometimes. This is extremely disturbing.
This next point I found extremely interesting. Official documentation claiming the Earth is flat, and that mathematical equations used in aeronautics assume a flat, non-rotating Earth. Check these out. This is a CIA document sourced from the Russians, and it's titled Dissertations Defended in the Scientific Council of the Institute of Physics of the Earth. In the document, it mentions a near sun and a formula that is derived on the assumption of a flat Earth. This United States Army document from the Army Research Laboratory on the propagation of electromagnetic fields over flat Earth mentions transmitters placed on the surface of a flat, idealized Earth. In one of its figures, it also mentions flat Earth. In another Army Research Laboratory document, it depicts a diagram showing a flat Earth, crepuscular rays that we mentioned earlier, and a near and localized sun. Here's another document on projectile flight dynamics, and the equations in the document assume a flat Earth. Here's a NASA document on the derivation and definition of a linear aircraft model. Introduction. This report details the development of the linear model of rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA document on the SR-71 Blackbird and its top speed of 2,193 miles per hour. Maneuvers depending on a non-turbulent atmosphere and a non-rotating Earth. Federal Aviation Administration document. Equations of motion assuming a flat, non-rotating Earth. Another NASA document. A rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. An aircraft model for the AIAA Controlled Design Challenge. Flight dynamics of a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA Technical Paper 1285, Flat, Non-Rotating Earth. A NASA Georgia Tech project in conjunction with the U.S. Air Force. A model frequently used is that of a flat, non-rotating Earth. But you have to admit that a lot of these flight calculations are based on a flat, non-rotating Earth because they come right out and say it.
During the Cold War, the CIA collected thousands of academic documents so they could dig through and analyze everything and see if there was any major advancements being made in things like geophysics, which could in turn hint at technological or military applications. They wanted to know what kind of weapons they were working on. The CIA document, Dissertations Defended in the Scientific Council of the Institute of Physics of the Earth, references a flat Earth, not as a statement of belief or fact, but within the context of a specific scientific methodology. In 1957, a female scientist from Russia was trying to calculate how to determine how bright the daylight was outside during the day, and she didn't need to incorporate the atmosphere of our entire planet to get her math to work out. So she took a mathematical shortcut and assumed a flat, constant plane to measure from. That is literally what the document says if you read it. And again, the only reason it was recorded in the first place is because the Soviets might have potentially been using this information for missile testing. As far as what's in the document, an energy budget model to calculate the low atmosphere profiles of effective sound speed at night. The image he shows of a localized sun is not even in the document, which makes sense because the entire report is referencing a nighttime acoustics experiment. The more I look at this stuff, the more I feel like if people just read what these actual reports were on, instead of just focusing on the few mentions of a flat Earth, they would realize that this is all just a bunch of scientists using a hypothetical flat plane to do calculations off of. I did only look into the first 3 reports he was talking about, though. I started noticing a pattern and I quit investigating. So what's in the other reports, I couldn't tell you for sure. But I know he lied in the video about that second part.
It has to be able to have a direct line to the air.
By the rate of Doppler change that those signals come back, we can actually gauge the speed of that aircraft. Some of the things that I witnessed that were very interesting about radar is that we would be able to track aircraft all the way down to the ground, and I do mean all the way down to the ground at distances of around 100 miles. And now that I know the calculation curvature, 100 miles is 6,666 feet of curvature, of drop. That is literally impossible because radar works at microwave frequencies, 2 to 6 gigahertz or even higher, anywhere in the microwave spectrum, and it is absolutely reliant on it being line of sight, meaning if you can't see it, it don't work. When you take into consideration that we're able to track aircraft from, whatever altitude they're coming in at, all the way down to the ground at a target 100 miles away, and knowing that that target should be 6,000 plus foot below the curvature, that kind of eliminates the ball model.
Just a quick explanation from Grok about how radar functions makes all of this make complete sense. Granted, there may be some big conspiracy to keep this off the internet, but it makes sense. Apparently, these radar systems do work off of a sense of line of sight, but they use radio waves, which have the ability to bounce off the atmosphere and ping the plane. And if they aren't getting the line of sight required because they have like terrain or something blocking the plane, they have smaller transmitters to fill in the gaps because they know where all the plane's routes are. And according to the internet, that system has been in use in the US since at least the 70s in some shape, fashion, or form. This video also did not prove to me that the Earth is flat, but I am absolutely willing to look into any evidence anyone wants to send me. I love researching this stuff.
Because if bells had the ability to heal in the story of Jericho, sound actually destroyed things.
What is black noise?
Black noise?
Yeah.
Black noise is something that Burroughs got very interested in. It's
intriguing.
Well, no, it's the one facet of black noise is that everything, like a glass, if an opera singer hits a particular note, the vibrations are that of the metabolism of the glass, and it cracks it, yeah? So black noise is the register within which you can crack a city or people or It's a new controlled bomb. It's a noise bomb, in fact, which can destroy.
Is it a real thing? I mean, is it something that's actually somebody's experimenting
it was invented
with?
in France.
Could a tyrant use it to...
Well, until last year, you could buy the patent for it in the French patent office for about equivalent to $3-4.
And it would wipe out it's concentrated.
It depends how much money you put into it. I mean, a small one could probably kill about half the people, yeah, but a big one could destroy a city, or even more. I mean,
it's a weird idea.
Don't look at it's not my idea.
No.
Isn't it interesting that the guy that played Tesla in that movie is the one talking about this, David Bowie? That's funny.
It is interesting. I mean, like, I get it. Musician, he would have some kind of knowledge of sounds, but like, yeah, it's weird. Like, he seemed like he knew a lot about that.
Pretty unusual that he's just like, why are you asking about that? And he just like pops off like some explanation of it. Clearly David Bowie's like knowing something, learning something. I mean, like, why would he even be like, you can buy a patent on it at about $3 or $4? Like, why would you even know that? Like, who would know that? I don't know what the French patent off it is.
I thought his body language was super interesting when he was like, he's like, I mean, a small one, take out about half the people here. And it wasn't like a smile or anything like I just smiled, but it was like a knowing look, like, yeah, you could kill about half the people here. This one was very strange.
Yeah, I was thinking like he was going to say, oh, I could break this glass. Like, you didn't expect him to say it would murder all these people in the room.
He gave the look like, yeah, this is really dark, but honestly, yeah, about half of them.
He's like, yeah, well, how much money are you talking about putting into it? It's not just the patent.
Like, he's done this deal a couple times.
He's been in a room where they've discussed what it would take to do that.
I think if you look into the life of David Bowie, it totally makes sense that he would know about this. The guy was obsessed with the occult and mysticism. That entire Ziggy Stardust portion of his career was supposed to be him channeling dead singers and bringing them to perform with him on stage or something. The guy was deeply entrenched in this stuff. I think he knew about it because he made it a point to research all these things. He was into witchcraft, wizardry, spells, rituals, all of it. If you can get over the bad language and the really extremely off-color jokes, there's a really good multi-part podcast that was put out about him that was put out shortly after he died by Last Podcast on the Left. It really goes into vivid detail about everything that he was involved in. I do not suggest the podcast itself in general, but those episodes are absolutely worth listening to.
Certain sounds, there is a certain sound that they cannot stand, that they panic and they run away from. I know They Live, and in the movie They Live, and in They Live, there is a sound, there is a frequency, I don't know if you remember it towards the end, that Roddy Piper goes to, and it's a frequency that's being beamed out, which enables these aliens to look in human form. And when he breaks this frequency, then they're all seen. It alters the holographic projection that they're keeping. And I think it's a misconception that they are actually shape-shifting. Some are, but it's a misconception. Yeah. What they're actually doing is altering your visual cortex to make you think you're seeing them that way.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
And this is very important as well, you know, because you can that's the truth. They're not actually looking that way. They've just manipulated your mind to think that they are.
And that must work through all kind of visual media. Otherwise, you'd see a lot of these aliens walking around on TV.
Absolutely, yeah. I've noticed a lot of newsreaders, because they're doing that as an indoctrination and conditioning. If you look at newsreaders, because they're the ones who are in your house every day. Look carefully at the newsreaders. It's slowly drip drip. Conditioning you to accept.
BBC is the worst, I think.
Yes, yeah. I've noticed since we've changed to digital now, my senses have become extremely heightened, and even when I'm just listening to the TV, or even when you turn the volume down, I hear this sound frequency coming from the television that completely messes with my pineal gland.
I thought this guy had an interesting theory, regardless of his claim there at the end that the TV is messing up his pineal gland. Maybe it is, I don't know. But we keep toying with this idea that we might be living in a simulation. What if it's a partial simulation on top of a real plane like this guy's talking about? I know the idea sounds crazy, but we know that the people in charge like to hide stuff from us, like whenever they blur out all the good stuff on Google Earth, and we know that they have technology that we likely couldn't even fathom. What if certain aspects of our reality are visually impaired with some sort of manipulation they're creating with some unknown technology? Clearly, I haven't seen any evidence for this, and it's just an idea, but it sounds somewhat plausible to me. It sounds absolutely crazy, but at the same time, it's definitely something they would attempt if they had the ability to pull it off.
Do you know that Tesla invented this machine and you got to get one? So I got one, pretty much, and it arrived at my house, and there were no instructions, but that wasn't so bad because I knew what it did, and it only had one knob. It had an on-off knob and one knob, so that was easy. So then I bought a bigger machine than the one I had before, and I couldn't bring this here because you can barely lift it. And this is the sort of machine they used to have in every hospital in the world. The technology is called diathermy. And I've got a small device here, try not to break it. So with this machine here, so this one's got 4 electrodes in. It's got a general purpose one, which you can use for wrinkles, pain, anything at all. Then it's got one for the thyroid. Then it's got one that you hold in your hand and you charge yourself up with energy. But the one you hold in your hand has another use. Let's say you give it to somebody else to hold in their hand. Then, when you touch them, let's say they're holding it like this. You touch them and the energy will flow through their body to your hands, so you can give them an energy massage. Why this technology works, there are actually several levels to it, but the most obvious level is that they are electron generators. They generate electrons, as do all of you. Every time you do movement, you're generating electrons, and that's what the cells of our body run on. We are electrical beings. When I was lying down outside, touching the grass, which was slightly damp, I was getting a whole bundle of electrons from the planet, because the planet sort of exudes electrons. It's part of the lightning strikes that happen around the world. Actually, there's some electron generation going on there. Equally, if you've taken something like vitamin C, one of the many actions that vitamin C does is to create electrons in your body. I've had people who've said, well, I took the vitamin C yesterday. Normally I can walk like 100 meters, and now I can walk a mile. The energy is what we need and what we run on. So these Tesla devices basically provide 1,000 or more times the dollop of electrons that we'd normally get from any other way, which is why you can get such instant results. It's not that they're difficult technology, but if you go to your average electrician who fixes your fridge or something, he does not understand how 2 resonating Tesla coils work. And these are not just electrical, they're mechanical as well. So you've got moving parts moving at a very high speed. Other versions use spark gaps. I've got one at home where you turn it on and there's sparks going all over the place from these 4 devices, and you can tune them to change the frequencies. But essentially, all these that I brought here only run on one frequency.
I searched and searched trying to dig up information on this device, and unless the internet is actively trying to hide information about this, I think this guy is making stuff up to try to sell his message. Tesla didn't invent this thing. It was a German physician, though the physician did claim that Tesla heavily influenced his work. The device itself, though, has absolutely incredible capabilities. It's still being used in multiple different forms in hospitals still to this day. But with everything I read on it, I don't understand why this isn't common knowledge and everybody doesn't have one of these in their house. I mean, I do know why they won't make it common knowledge, but they should. This thing literally makes wounds heal faster.
So this man, his name is Gennady Krokalev. He was a Russian psychiatrist and scientist, and he worked with psychiatric patients that were prone to having hallucinations and visions. He had read that the retina of the human eye can essentially project imagery of that's in the mind's eye that can be captured on camera. So what he was doing here, and I've seen a video of him doing this, it's very hard to find anything much about his work. So he has this thing here, it's called a Zenith camera. It's got this kind of extension, and then this is like a scuba diving mask where he's taken the lens out. This is one of his patients who is sitting comfortably. I've seen this video actually, and he has someone standing beside him just calmly asking now, what are you seeing? So as the patient comes into seeing one of their visions or having a hallucination or literally feeling like they are seeing something in reality, he'll tell the other person what he's seeing, and then Gennady will take a photo. So you would think, well, how could the photo capture anything? Because this is just our eyes, right? But actually, you'd be surprised. So before I show you the photo, I want you to bear in mind that this is not like the regular photos we're used to seeing. This is a photo of light taken from our eyes, from a mental projection, like in the mind's eye view. Plus, it is nearly impossible to find any of Gennady's work because it was classified after he died, and 3 hours before he died, he'd rung his brother and he said, "I've just found the biggest discovery. It's going to change the world." And then he was found hanging 3 hours later, which seemed suspicious. So here we have 3 images. Here, this image says antlers in Russian. You can see the face here, and you can see this image. This says snake. So I think this is interesting, but this work was repeated by more Russian scientists about 15 years ago, and they used someone who could remote view instead of psychiatric patients. And so they did use the same setup on her. They used the same camera, the same goggles situation, and the scientist stood behind the wall holding up numbers and shapes, and as she tuned into them, she'd say, "Okay, I've got it," in her mind's eye. They'd push the camera, click the button, and here are some of what she did. Here's the number 1, and here is the triangle.
This is a really interesting one. I read up on this guy, and while he absolutely was ridiculed in his home country, it seems like the rest of the world was highly intrigued by his work. Though, according to the internet, no other team has ever been able to successfully reproduce his findings. However, I would assume that anyone who has a pair of goggles and a camera could pull off this experiment. He wasn't exactly secretive about how he was achieving his results. There are multiple photos of him doing it. I think the best way to find out if this works is to try it out. I just wonder how there's enough light coming out of a person's eye for the camera sensor to actually even pick anything up, especially with the sensors they had access to back in those days.
So the new norm for body temperatures. Really? So they're basically trying to say that our new normal for body temperatures is 97.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? Now we all know that we've all checked our temperature before, and we all know it's been 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. They're just trying to say in the last few years that everybody's body temperature is dropped, and the average now is 97.5.
Normal body temperature.
98.6 has long been considered that normal magic number, but Emily Kinzer is here with word from a doctor who said that's changing.
For 150 years, it's been commonly known, the average human body temperature.
98.6.
Even the thermometers at the drugstore say so. But what if we told you this is no longer the norm?
What's going on here? In my opinion, with all of this, I think somebody's doing some tests on those little tiny microbots inside some people, or most of people anyway. Maybe they're seeing if they could drop our temperature? Maybe. And it's the new norm.
I just wanted to address this for the fear-mongering aspect of it. If you're worried about this, don't be. There are multiple studies out that show that the average temperature of the human being has been dropping by half a degree per decade for pretty much as far back as we have data for. And they have a pretty reasonable hypothesis as to why that is. 100 years ago, people just came into more daily contact with diseases and bacteria and things that cause more inflammation in the human body, therefore driving body temperature averages up. They could be hiding something. They could be up to no good, but these studies have been around for forever, long before 2020. So personally, if you come across this and it's freaking you out a little bit, I don't think this is anything to worry about. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But with all that out of the way, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow.